Well, welcome into your Weather Impact extended weekend forecast here on 13 WMAZ+. We're going to break down what you can expect for all your weekend activities. We have event-specific forecasts, and we have a preview about what we're expecting in the extended portion of your forecast into the work week next week. Past that with some of the 8 to 14-day temperature and precipitation outlooks, and we'll talk about what to expect in the next coming weeks. It is getting into an eventful stretch here in Central Georgia over the next couple of weeks as we progress through the month of March. Let's start out with Future View as we go into your Friday afternoon, more so the evening hours, right there around 5 o'clock as you are wrapping up yet another work week. That is when we are going to begin to see some spotty showers flare up, operating off the heat of the day after some cloud cover and some foggy skies that we've had present for the morning hours on Friday does get out of here. Warmer temperatures, sufficient humidity in the forecast. Future View is going to look like a summertime forecast in the aspect that all these rain chances are going to continue to operate off the heat of the day. So the timing looking like sometime right around morning commute or evening commute, and then we are going to see some pockets where some of those showers get a bit heavier. I wouldn't rule out maybe hearing a rumble of thunder or two, but still going to be relatively hit or miss. We might have some clusters of some showers that are a bit widespread, but not everyone is going to receive rain for any Friday afternoon and evening plans. And as we go into the nighttime hours around 10 p.m., most of those rain chances are fizzling out because they're losing that daytime heating that we will see in the form of some high temperatures. They get into the low and maybe even the mid 80s throughout the back half of your Friday. Now let's go ahead and talk about Saturday morning. Going to start out nice and gloomy where we have our fair share of some sprinkle and some mist showers within some of that lower lying cloud cover in the form of some surface fog. So just like what we've been talking about as of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, even going into Friday mornings where we do have a gloomy atmosphere to walk out the door to. But eventually as we progress into the afternoon, that cloud cover does begin to clear, and the more surface heating that we get, the more peaks of sunshine that we get, that's going to contribute to some warmer temperatures, which will once again lead to some pop-up showers and maybe even a few rumbles of thunder that we have in the cards throughout the back half of the afternoon into the evening hours on Saturday. But then we begin to spot a frontal boundary approaching as we go later into Saturday night. That's sending some widespread rain chances over into central Alabama, up into northwest Georgia. Doesn't really look like we see anything besides a few showers that are popping up well ahead of the front as we go into Saturday night. But I wouldn't be surprised if you still hear a little bit of pitter-patter on your windows if you are trying to fall asleep later on Saturday night. You kind of get awoken in the middle of the night. But as we go into Sunday morning, once again, our fair share of cloud cover. That's going to be a combination of fog. That's going to be a combination of mid-level cloud cover and some upper-level cloud cover that we will have in the cards, walking out to a pretty gray atmosphere until we get into the afternoon. Then we are going to start to see some more widespread showers, some embedded pockets of, once again, some heavier showers and some thunderstorms, and that continues into the afternoon and into the evening hours on Sunday. I would say that the coverage of rain, you should expect it to be a little bit greater and a little bit more widespread on Sunday. And that's because we are going to have a forcing mechanism with this front that comes through, installs either here in central Georgia or in the near vicinity of us, maybe just up to the northwest. That's going to create a bit of lift and a forcing mechanism that could lead to at least some more widespread rain chances. And you will see that reciprocated on our weekend outlook graphic. So let's go ahead and talk about your outlooks that we do have possibly in play for the course of this weekend. Northwest Georgia, that's where we are seeing a low-end level 1 out of 5 risk for maybe a potentially strong to severe storm, kind of like many of the similar risks that we've seen issued by the SPC as of recent weeks. This just means that 1 or 2 storms could be a bit stronger than just your run-of-the-mill thunderstorms that we do see during the spring and maybe getting into the early summertime. Gusty winds, possible hail, of course frequent lightning, and some pockets of some heavy downpours going to be enveloped within some of those stronger thunderstorms. This isn't guaranteeing a severe thunderstorm warning for North Georgia over the course of Saturday, but the biggest thing I want to turn your attention to is the chances are greater up in the northwest portion of the state. I don't have much confidence in any severe weather risk in central Georgia on Saturday because Number one, we are not included in this outlook, but that doesn't mean anything. We are right on the edge of it, our northwesternmost counties, and we know that the weather doesn't obey these boundaries that the SPC outlooks do give them. But also, I'm just not seeing anything besides the pop-up nature of these showers and thunderstorms. And maybe if we were 95 and we had dew point temperatures in the mid-70s, we could be talking about some pop-up strong to severe storms, but we don't necessarily have that warm and that humid of an environment. But it will still be suitable for maybe some pockets of some rumbles of thunder per se. And then we go into your day 3 storm outlook, and there is no outlook for anywhere here in the state of Georgia. Now, this could change over the course of the weekend, so continue to stay updated with your weekend forecast. But my main messaging that you will hear about all throughout Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you are going to have some relatively low rain chances. And yes, they are thunderstorm icons, but take a look at the other aspect of these icons. There is some sunshine. You do have at times throughout central Georgia throughout this weekend that is just going to simply be partly cloudy, and you are going to have warm temperatures each of the next 3 days. It is pretty much a copy and paste forecast Friday into Saturday into Sunday. However, a slightly more impressive rain chance on Sunday just due to that forcing mechanism I was talking about. And maybe a slightly cooler high temperature because I do expect the clouds to linger a little bit longer into the first part of your Sunday morning, courtesy of that frontal boundary driving through. We're going to keep the cloud cover a bit more widespread. It won't be that gloomy start that does clear out into a mostly sunny start to the afternoon like what we see on Friday and what we will see on Saturday. Morning low temperatures still going to have a noticeable humidity and very likely going to walk out the door to some numbers above the 60-degree mark, but some areas are going to dip down a little bit farther than others. We might see a couple of scattered upper 50s depending on the morning for Saturday and Sunday. So let's talk about some of those numbers specifically. It does seem a little bit too warm for this time of year, and that's why I headlined this graphic. Is it the month of March or is it the month of May? Because given the nature of these showers and thunderstorms just operating off the heat of the day, that is very reminiscent of a summertime forecast here in central Georgia when we're really warm. Like I said, temperatures mainly in the 90s, and you do have plenty of moisture in the forecast. We are seeing that, but not necessarily full-blown summertime forecasts. But these numbers are going to flirt with some records. In fact, the forecasted high for Friday afternoon, 85 degrees. That is 1 degree shy of the record of 86, which was actually, believe it or not, set just 3 years ago, back in 2023. Saturday, the record temperature stands at 87 degrees. And what we have in the forecast a little bit lower. You will notice these temperatures go down day by day because we are forecasting maybe the cloud cover to hang around a little bit longer on Saturday and Sunday compared to Friday. And then Sunday, the record high temperature, 88 degrees. So the records on Saturday and Sunday both set back in 1974, and our forecasted highs don't look to quite be in the neighborhood of threatening some of those records. But it remains to be seen. If we get some clearing in the morning clouds a little bit earlier than anticipated, that's going to lead to at least an extra hour or two possibly of some warming where we could see the numbers overshoot their forecasted highs. So in terms of how much rain we are expecting, it's not going to be a substantial amount. Don't go banking on maybe some rainfall totals up to about 0.8 of an inch really that could improve maybe something in the way of drought conditions. It's not good enough in order to improve those. It may be enough to halt them from worsening, but I did want to turn your attention to the fact that this graphic shows your widespread rain chances to the north and northwest of us. So where that frontal boundary does kind of stall at, that's where the rain chances are going to be a lot better. There are still areas on this graphic that don't receive any rainfall whatsoever. 0 in Warner Robins, 0 down in Montezuma, 0 down in Cordele, 0 in Wrightsville. That's not to say that those areas will not see any rain over the course of this weekend, but just know due to the hit or miss and the isolated nature of these showers and storms, there will be some areas that completely dodge the rain over the course of this weekend. That's why we are going to continue to hammer in the point that you want to prepare for the worst, but expect the best. So have the rain gear ready to go because Mother Nature also has a very funny way of finding a way to pop up a shower or a thunderstorm over you when she knows that you didn't bring the umbrella or the rain jacket for some outdoor plans. So in terms of the humidity, we are going to see some dew point temperatures in the mid to the upper 60s, and you can start to get a glimpse of this frontal boundary driving through, number one, by the convergence of these winds that we're seeing, but also a slightly drier patch of air behind the frontal boundary. And you can see as it tries to push down into the southeast, it really loses its organization or kind of recedes back up to the north, where we are seeing a dividing line of no moisture really up in areas like Tennessee, but we are continuing to keep the warmer and the more humid air down in the state of Georgia over to Alabama, these Gulf Coast states. So that frontal boundary isn't going to sweep through and maybe usher in those shades of no color, or I guess not even shades, where you are just going to see a very dry environment. That's what we have indicated on this legend by kind of seeing the landscape of the earth, no shades of light green or even some dark green whatsoever. That is going to show that we will kind of continue this bit of a summer-like forecast into the beginning of next week. This is Monday at 1 a.m. and your dew point temperatures are still kind of hovering in the same range as they are to begin the weekend on Friday and into Saturday. The other aspect that you are going to want to know, especially if you have early morning plans to head out the door around Saturday, around Sunday, that is going to be some widespread fog, kind of like what we've seen over the past couple of days, and then you're going to have your patchy areas of dense fog. So what I mean by that is the fog is going to be all across central Georgia, not necessarily engulfing all of us, but most areas. It may be in the form of some thinner fog where you can see things pretty clearly ahead of you, but as you look off in the distance, things do get a bit fuzzier. But then you are going to come across those isolated and localized patches where the visibility does get really, really bad. Specifically areas that are going to be near some low-lying bodies of water, and also maybe some areas that have some puddles on the ground from some showers that came and kind of trailed through during the nighttime hours. That's going to lead to a lot of surface moisture continuing to be present. So if you do get a shower later in the day on Saturday or later in the day on Friday, you very likely could walk out the door to your fair share of some low-level cloud cover the next morning. But the fog is only going to be a morning concern. As we head farther along into the afternoon, here's a look at the visibility improving already by about 10 a.m. throughout your Friday. So the quicker that we get better visibility is also going to kind of go hand in hand with more sunshine in the forecast. So it does look like Saturday afternoon, we might start the warm up as early as 10 to 11 a.m. But we also have to take into account the fact that a lot of this fog is going to lift up. So it's just going to be in the form of maybe some higher level clouds compared to the surface level cloud cover that we will see throughout the late morning hours, but eventually it will clear as we go into the afternoon. Here's a look at Sunday morning. Once again, a morning where we are seeing some darker shades of gray, which are indicating those patchy areas of dense fog where you can barely see the car in front of you. But the lighter shades of gray are going to indicate some thinner fog in nature, and that's just kind of creating a fuzzy image or a bit of gray and gloominess as you look off in the distance. That's going to be the case throughout your Sunday morning, and then some areas where we do see some heavy showers you will see throughout the afternoon. There's a little bit of light gray in some isolated pockets. I wouldn't worry about that whatsoever. But then we go into Monday morning, and it still looks like we're dealing with our fair share of fog down here in the state of Georgia and across the southeast. So don't expect really any change to how we have been starting out the mornings over the last couple of days at any point throughout this weekend and going into the beginning of next week. But now let's talk about some of your event-specific forecasts. Now, all these graphics I'm going to show you, the forecast is once again still going to be the same. A gloomy start where we try to clear out into the early afternoon, and then later into the afternoon and the evening, we have some isolated rain chances. So that's going to be the same day by day, but I do want to kind of talk about some temperatures that we're expecting for things like maybe the Mercer baseball forecast over the course of this weekend. The Bears are squaring off against Alcorn State here at Ortho Georgia Park. Game 1 Friday at 6. Game 2 Saturday at 2, and Game 3 going to be Sunday at 1 o'clock. Expect some mid to upper 70s. I wouldn't even doubt some 80s that could be in the forecast. That's mainly going to be for Saturday and Sunday as opposed to Friday, because Friday the game is going to kind of start when the temperatures are already beginning their cool down. But you will notice the partly cloudy icon with a thunderstorm on it as well. You have the chance of seeing a thunderstorm. You have the chance of just seeing an isolated, very brief sprinkle shower. You have the chance of seeing nothing at all. But the moral of the story is you want to have the umbrella ready to go at all points through Game 1, Game 2, or Game 3, whichever one you're planning on heading out to. But it is going to be a warm environment. So underneath the rain jacket, probably some t-shirt and shorts weather. And don't forget the sunscreen. If you do have an extended period of some sun this weekend, you might catch yourself getting a little bit darker than you may have anticipated. Sunset going to be at 6:34 p.m. However, that is going to get an hour later as you go into Sunday, but obviously Game 3 going to be Sunday at 1 o'clock, so I don't doubt unless the game goes to maybe 18 innings, you will be viewing the sunset at Ortho Georgia Park on Sunday. The Georgia Bulldogs also continuing the home stretch to kick off the season. They are squaring off against Queens University. And if you're a Bulldog fan like myself, you've been following some Georgia baseball, hasn't been the best start to the year. We've dropped a couple of midweek games like we did to Western Carolina this past week. Hopefully we can get back on board with a 4-game sweep of Queens. Doubleheader on Saturday at 1 and 5 o'clock, or about 30 minutes after the conclusion of the earlier game is when Game 2 will start. Game 1 Friday at 3 p.m. and Game 4 also at Sunday at 1 p.m. We are going to expect temperatures in the low to the mid-70s, a tad bit cooler than the forecast here in Macon, but overall same story, different location. Have the rain gear ready to go just in case you need it. However, up to the north, those areas where the boundary is going to stall a little bit closer to, I would anticipate a bit of a mostly cloudy Sunday, not going to necessarily see too much in the way of some sunshine, and we are looking at some better rain chances up to the north of us throughout Sunday afternoon. And then we go to Georgia Tech, who will be squaring off and kicking off conference play, believe it or not, against the Virginia Tech Hokies. I did change the location of this because it seems like the social media page of Georgia Tech does deem it McNeese Baseball Park instead of Rush Chandler Stadium. They go hand in hand. It's basically one is going to be the actual ballpark, the actual field, and then the stadium as a whole is going to be Rush Chandler Stadium. But nonetheless, wanted to get in the lingo with the social media team. Game 1, Game 2, and Game 3. Friday at 6 p.m., then Saturday at 2 p.m., and then we go into Sunday at 12 p.m. Actually, I believe that start is going to be around 1 p.m. I think Sunday is probably the game that might have a bit of a rain delay, but I don't really expect much if there isn't going to be anything in the way of rumbles of thunder. I'm forecasting mainly some showers for Game 3 on Sunday. Nonetheless, temperature is going to be a little bit cooler on Sunday because we will have more cloud cover up to the north, and you still have the possibility of rain throughout Game 1 on Friday and Game 2 on Saturday. So keep the umbrella handy, but once again, a very pleasant spring-like forecast otherwise. And then we will go back here to some event-specific forecasts. Perry International Festival, tad bit gloomy to start the festival right around lunchtime. Fun rolls on with some hit-or-miss rain in the forecast, so bring the rain jacket and the umbrella out to downtown Perry. And as you're wrapping up, it could also be a possibly wet into the festival, but there is still the likelihood that none of these rain chances play out whatsoever. A very summer-like forecast. You don't go canceling any plans that you have during the summertime here in Central Georgia over a 20 or 30% chance of rain, and neither should you this weekend. Weekend grillcast, green spatulas, just have a little bit of caution. If obviously it is a little bit loud and a little bit messy outside, you're definitely not going to want to grill out. But just wait a couple minutes, and I think those showers and maybe even a storm, if it does come over your area, will be very quick to leave the area. So I still have green spatulas, fire up the grill all weekend long. So all in all, the main thing that you need to know for your weekend attire: t-shirt, shorts, sunglasses, sunscreen. Don't forget that, because there will be extended periods of some sunshine this weekend, and I've caught myself getting sunburn as early as the month of February when we've seen some 70s, so I don't want you to make the same mistake as well. But keep the rain jacket and the umbrella on standby. If you need it, great, you're prepared. If you don't need it, great. You don't need to worry about breaking it out whatsoever. That's what we are going to talk about a lot as we head into the warmer times of the year, and especially once we get into June, July, and August. This is very likely going to be what this graphic looks like just about each and every weekend. But let's go ahead and talk about your extended forecast a little bit. Do we see any change to the summer-like pattern as we go into the beginning of next week? Well, Monday morning, what you're not seeing on here are the foggy skies. So we talked about it with the Future View fog graphic. It looks like as we go into the beginning of next week, we are going to have a rather gloomy and foggy and groggy start to the morning on Monday. And then as we go into the afternoon, peaks of sunshine. European model hinting at some more widespread showers than necessarily the GFS is. I would say the rain chances are a little bit lower, down to about 20 or 30% as we roll into your Monday afternoon and into the evening. But it still looks like that kind of summertime pattern where all of these rain chances are going to pop up off the heat of the day a little bit later on. And then we do see some of these long-range models holding on to some showers as we go into Tuesday morning. We'll see if that necessarily plays out. But the main thing that I'm not seeing for the beginning of next week are signs of a very widespread and substantial rainmaker. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday kind of just continuing with the summertime pattern. Your high temperatures are still going to remain in the low 80s, which you'll see in a graphic coming up. So that's going to be the good thing. Continue to soak up this stretch of some unseasonably warm temperatures. Yes, it is the springtime. We typically see some more 70s in the forecast, but some low and mid 80s, that's a bit premature. We don't start to normally see those on a more consistent basis until we head into April, maybe into early May. Here's Wednesday morning. Looks like we'll have some cloud cover out ahead of this next weather maker, which is going to be over to the west. And this is what we're going to go ahead and keep an eye on here on the weather team, because it does look like this next frontal system could be our next widespread rainmaker, maybe even possibly our next storm maker. And right now you can see there's pretty good agreement over to the west, northwest of us, up into Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, over to eastern Texas on the timing and the nature of this rain, which is really widespread. But as we go throughout Wednesday, it doesn't quite look like any of those showers make their way in here until we get sometime into Thursday and into Friday. Now, this isn't the best agreement this far out, but good news is we still have about 6, maybe even 5 days to really fine-tune this forecast as we get closer. But we can see that both models are hinting at widespread precipitation across areas down in the Gulf Coast, and eventually that will creep its way over into central Georgia, maybe in the form of a low pressure center establishing itself, giving kind of more of a widespread nature to these precipitation chances, or it could be a frontal boundary, maybe trying to organize, and that would be more of a thinner line of precipitation, at least heavy precipitation ahead of the front. Nonetheless, we're getting a little bit too sciencey with it this far out. The main thing I want you to know and take away from this is next Thursday into next Friday, it's very likely going to be a very messy forecast, so go ahead and keep that in the back of your head. That might be the next opportunity to break out the rain jacket if you're not really worried about these hit or miss shower and storm chances I did talk about over the course of this weekend and into the beginning of next week. But the trade-off is, if we do welcome in this rain chance as we go into the end of the work week next week, that means we are going to dry out as we go into the weekend next weekend. In fact, I'm even seeing some signs of some high temperatures dipping down into the 70s and the 60s. Mighty chilly, I know, right? Well, compared to the 80s, yes, it is, but that's actually kind of around where we should be this time of year. But as the high temperatures go back down to around average, so will the morning lows. So be prepared for your fair share of some morning lows down into the 40s as we go into next weekend. Feeling a lot more typical of a spring-like forecast where you need to dress in layers. You're still feeling a little bit of winter in the morning hours. But nonetheless, we will talk about the temperatures here coming up in just a moment. This is also what I want to turn your attention to, where we have the day 5 and the day 6 outlooks from the SPC. And this is why I'm going ahead and telling you that we need to go ahead and throw this system on our radar, because areas over to the west, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, getting over into as far north as Illinois, Arkansas, down to Louisiana and portions of Mississippi are all outlined in a 15% chance of seeing something in the way of severe weather. Typically, this 15% chance this far out ahead of time does correlate to a level 2 out of 5 risk. But we aren't seeing that risk for us here in central Georgia just yet. But we are seeing a sign of things initializing, taking some organization and some better agreement out to the west. And we do know this system is going to impact us eventually as it does move over to the east. So we'll have to keep an eye out if we can get maybe an early warning that severe weather is going to be possible with this next system, or it may just be some widespread rain. But take a look at how much we add onto your rainfall totals as we go into Friday at 11 a.m. And some of these models aren't even hinting at all the rain being out by that time. How about some totals up to 3 inches widespread across most of central Georgia? That would be great for the drought conditions. It may come at the cost of maybe some severe weather in the cards. However, that is going to be some very beneficial rain. And as we get into this time of year, we really can't dodge much in the way of organized rain chances without them coming with a bit of a severe weather chance. But nonetheless, we get through it every year, and we will once again get through it this year. Now, as we go into the European, the GFS's counterpart, it does show about 1 to maybe 2 inches of rain as opposed to 3, but that's still pretty good agreement on at least some rainfall totals that will prevent the drought conditions from worsening as we get into that time frame. If we can get maybe say about 3 to 4 to 5 inches, that might actually lead to the improvement of some of those drought conditions, which, speaking of it, I have been referring to it quite often through this forecast. Well, why not break down what we've seen in the way of rainfall throughout 2026? And the short answer is we haven't seen too much. The month of January, we were 2 inches below where we should have been in terms of your rainfall totals. February, we were a lot closer to average, and if you tune into this on a daily basis, I always talk about how we did have a bit of a sensor issue early in February. We had a day where we recorded some rainfall, about a ½ inch of rainfall. However, it didn't get taken into account because of the sensor issue. So we were around a ½ inch below where we should have been for the totals for the month of February. If we had that one day taken into account, I think we would have been a lot closer to reaching our average mark for February rainfall. And so far in the month of March, about a 3/4 of an inch below where we should be, but we haven't had any recorded rainfall in the month of March, but it makes sense. We're only about 5 days into the month, all this data taken as of the 5th of March. And I imagine with the next couple of weather systems, we are going to hopefully maybe flip that red box into a green box and get back on the top side of this graphic. But all in all, we're just over 3 inches below where we should be at this point in the calendar year in terms of your rainfall. And your drought monitor did get an update that was a little bit promising as of this past Thursday. We see this little sliver of a yellow color now creeping into Washington County. That is some abnormally dry conditions, so definitely not as bad as the drought conditions that you do see across the rest of central Georgia. But we did see a little bit of relief, and hopefully that is a sign of things to come. However, with the latest drought information statement they did release as of yesterday with this drought monitor update, they did tell us to go ahead and anticipate these drought conditions to go basically throughout the duration of the spring season. Hopefully we can find some relief, but continue to make sure that you're taking care of your plants, of your grass, as we're now getting into that springtime season. Many plants are starting to prematurely bloom in terms of all of what we are seeing with the warmer temperatures. It just feels a lot more like April or May as opposed to early into March. So we are getting maybe a bit of an early start to the growing season, but we definitely need our fair share of rain, especially west central Georgia and getting down into southeast central Georgia. So keeping our fingers crossed, we can send some impressive rainfall totals into those areas. But your morning low temperatures for the second half of your 7-day forecast hovering around that 60-degree mark, well above average of 43 degrees. But as we go into next weekend, I am seeing some signs of your morning low temperatures returning closer to that average low of 43 degrees. And then your afternoon high temperatures hang around in the low to the mid 80s. But then we start to see signs of maybe a temperature decline, and that comes on Thursday. And that high temperature in the upper 70s is still warm. It's still well above average by about 10 or 11 degrees, but it is a little bit cooler than the low 80s because of the cloud cover and the widespread rain that we are going to see in the forecast towards Thursday and Friday next week. And then past that window, as we get to the end of next week, so next Friday all the way through the following Thursday, we are forecasting some near normal temperatures. Again, your average high temperature right now, 68 degrees. Your average low temperature going to be around 43 degrees. Those numbers are very likely going to go up. So for this window, March 13th through the 19th, I'd anticipate your average high temperature is going to be around 70 degrees and your average low temperature going to be around 45 degrees. Those are roughly the numbers you can expect as we go into really the tail end of the second week of March and going into the third week of March, which is going to be very eventful in terms of St. Patrick's Day, spring starting, and some other events happening here in central Georgia. And for your precipitation outlook, we are forecasted to stay near normal levels, but March is a month that we typically see our fair share of rain, so near normal does mean that we will see maybe possibly occasional weather makers that hopefully can send us some widespread rain chances. So not looking like we are going to trend drier, or we're not going to trend maybe well above average or dip well below average. It's looking like we are going to enter a stretch of weather that we should be feeling and we should be experiencing for this time of year as we go into the middle of March. So the time change, didn't include the specific graphic with that, but I've been talking about it all week long. We are going to spring forward this weekend. So Saturday night into Sunday morning, you're going to lose an hour of sleep. Go ahead and prepare yourself for it, but we are going to get an extra hour of some evening daylight. The sunset is going to be at 7:37 p.m. on Sunday evening, and it will continue to get later and later as we eventually progress into the summertime season and the summer solstice. That going to be on June 21st, I do believe, and that's going to be the longest day of the year in terms of hours of daylight. So that time change will be happening while you are fast asleep Saturday night, right before the 2 a.m. hour. The clocks are not going to hit 2 a.m. They are going to jump from 1:59 to 3 a.m. So if you are waking up and you don't have a device that updates the time automatically, what you need to do is go ahead and plan on waking up, and when you do, moving that time forward an hour for when you do wake up, but obviously making sure that you do set that alarm an hour earlier if you do need to be up and about pretty early on Sunday morning. So St. Patrick's Day, 11 days away. That is going to be on a Tuesday, like I mentioned. That's going to be kind of in that extended range of the forecast. Looks like we are going to experience some weather around what we should that time of year. Maybe some chilly mornings, but some pretty pleasant afternoons as we get into St. Patty's Day. And then the first day of spring goes hand in hand with another important date here in Central Georgia, the Cherry Blossom Festival, which is 3 days, after St. Patrick's Day. That following Friday, we're kicking off Cherry Blossom. We're kicking off the first day of astronomical spring. It is going to be an exciting time coming up in just 2 weeks here in Central Georgia, and can't wait to bring you that Cherry Blossom Festival each and every day that it does run through, the 20th of March all the way into the 29th. So thank you for tuning in for this extended weekend forecast. We'll be back Monday at 11 a.m. with a look at what's ahead as we continue the summertime stretch of weather and hopefully a better idea about those widespread rain chances next Thursday and Friday.